Ink up. Slow down. Write your rhythm with Script and Scribe.
Hi, welcome to Script and Scribe. I'm Kat, and today we're comparing two Sailor fountain pens. One sleek modern design and one charming vintage classic. Both feature Japanese nibs, 14 karats gold. On the one side, we've got the Sailor Pro Gear Slim Dusk, a Cult Pens limited edition with an extra fine 14 karat gold nib, retailing around £190. On the other side, we've got this 1960s Sailor pocket pen, again 14 karat gold nib with a red barrel, matte silver cap with tulip motif, which is so cute, and available for a much smaller second-hand price of just £37. We'll compare them in three areas: the writing performance, the aesthetic, and the value. So I think whether you're a seasoned collector or searching for a reliable everyday writer, I'm hoping that this comparison helps you find something that suits your style. Let's dive into the writing experience with the Cult Pens one. And before we do, what are we using? It is a Hobonichi A5 notebook with a grid design on it and Waterman Serenity blue ink, both of which pair really well with fountain pens. This ink is budget-friendly, quick drying, and flows smoothly. It's also a safe choice for vintage pens, as is Parker Quink ink. They're less acidic and reducing the risk of corrosion of fountain pens in general. Plus, it offers subtle shading with wider nibs, which is going to be less the case here because we've got an EF extra fine and an F fine nib. Good for daily use. So, quick note. This particular pen is only 1 week old, and I had a Sailor cartridge in there filled by the seller, and the ink was darker, so it's only been used halfway, and I then topped up the Serenity ink on top of that, so it's writing darker than Serenity ink would usually write.
In these ink swatches, we see the sort of shading that's less evident in a small nib. And now we're ready to do the writing performance, starting with the Sailor Pro Gear Slim.
It writes with precision and control, with moderate, consistent ink flow, no skips, no hard starts, no tinkering needed. That said, you'll feel the feedback, you can hear the feedback. The nib isn't buttery smooth, it's got that classic Sailor texture, a pencil-like sensation that connects you to the paper. Some find it scratchy, others find it satisfying. If you enjoy writing in compact planners and journaling with precision, it really shines. Because it puts down such a fine line, you're going to see light shading with the right ink, but don't expect anything dramatic. This is all about finesse. It is slender, so Pro Gear Slim lives up to its name. I have small hands and find it comfortable for long writing sessions, especially when it's posted like this with the cap on the back. But if you prefer chunkier pens, it's a bit dainty, and even I don't like writing with it unposted. Technically, it qualifies as a pocket pen in the same way that an Esterbrook JR Pocket does, size-wise, but it's not necessarily marketed as one. I did eye up the Pro Gear Slim Mini, which feels like a more true pocket pen. But with this Dusk and my vintage pocket pen here and a couple more Sailors in rotation, I just couldn't justify getting a Pro Gear Slim Mini. So let's have a quick look now at the vintage 1960s Sailor pocket pen. This contender is red on the main body except the top. We've got gold tone trim, which is in really good condition for something vintage because very often they fade to sort of silver. So this is in very good condition. Yes, there are some scratches that you can see on the actual cap, and that's not unusual. But what is unusual is to find this tulip design intact in the way that it is, wonderfully vibrant still. So a lot of these pens have got the scratches going all the way through the design, and this is in good condition. This fine nib is brilliant. It's a hairbreadth wider than the EF of the modern one, but the feel is different. It has a subtle softness to it. It's by no means a flex nib, but it offers a bit of give when you write. that springiness creating a cushioned sensation and slight line variation on the downstroke, which feels more expressive than the modern Pro Gear Slim. There's still feedback, but it's more of a muted feedback. The sounds are pretty much the same, but the sensation is softer. The flow is steady, and like the modern EF, I'd be happy to use this in small journals and planners. Exactly right for what you need in terms of the space that you're given in those planners, especially if you're using like Hobonichi Weeks or Cousin. For me, what stands out here between the two samples is that the vintage one has more expressiveness. So with just a little bit of pressure, especially on the downstroke, you get natural line variation, offering a little bit of charm, not flex, but a responsiveness. The Pro Gear Slim is ultra precise, offering that famous sailor pencil-like feedback, and feels ideal for detailed work or drawing. Anyone who enjoys a tactile, controlled writing experience would prefer this one. Both produce impressively fine lines, as you can see, especially the extra fine Pro Gear Slim, and they both have that wonderful scratch sound. Well, you might not find it wonderful, but be aware that they both have that scratch sound as you write. Now, considering that this pen is over 60 years old, I think it's impressive how it holds up when compared to a pen that's only 2 years old. So let's talk design, because visually they can't be any more different. Sailor offers a wide range of colorways for this Pro Gear line. That's the Pro Gear King of Pens, Pro Gear Slim, and Slim Mini. Loads of colors, loads of designs. Some of them even have patterns on them and everything. Other models from Sailor feature a more core set of shades. They revolve around those more sedate, elegant, minimalist vibes. And this particular one does keep to that tradition. It still feels elegant and minimalist, but not quite as standard as the black pens. Inspired by Twilight, it's a soft mauve, more understated than bold, more elegant than flashy. And this Cult Pens exclusive had a limited run. You won't find this exact colorway in Sailor's main catalog. The glossy resin shows off the dusky hue beautifully, while the gold trim provides a warm, slightly regal contrast. The shape follows Sailor's classic Pro Gear design, flat ends, a sailor anchor finial, and compact proportions. The cap threads are smooth. From the engraved cap band to this ornate nib with the anchor, it's just feeling very professional yet personal. If you've been following me from the first video, you'll know that this is a staple in my rotation. I often pair it with Wearingild's Jane Eyre ink, which complements the Dusk's muted tones. This newer to me vintage pocket pen has its own kind of charm. It's cheerful, compact, and full of mid-century vibes. Capped, it's truly pocket-sized, short enough to fit in a shirt pocket or a pen pouch with ease. The long cap that we have here is such a clever design, because once you pop it onto the short barrel, you get a standard size, full length, comfortable writer. So this was called a long short pen, and Sailor is credited with creating the long short transformation for the first time in their 1963 Sailor Mini. They're not credited with creating pocket pens. I mean, those were around for ages, and Kaweco did loads of them, like in the 30s, I think. But this long short format was a direct design that was inspired by the change in workwear fashion when shirt pockets became shorter and standard pens could no longer easily fit inside them. So Platinum and Pilot soon followed, and one of the most popular long short pocket pens of the era was actually the Pilot Elite, because it is also what inspired our modern E95s that people absolutely love, a bestseller of pilots still today. So from 1963 to 1977, Sailor, Pilot, Platinum, they were all producing the long short format, and they were very popular until it started waning in popularity around the 1977. Now, I believe that this Tulip pen would date between 1963, when the first Mini was created, and 1968, when Platinum also came out with a Tulip design long short pen. So if you know how to date these Sailor pens, do let me know, because I think I can see the number 90 on the side of the nib. But unlike the Pilot pens, I find the dating, or the code for dating these pens, really tricky for Sailor. Pilot has a fantastic way of doing it, but that's for another time. The pen was particularly popular among university students, while the black and gold amongst Sailor, Pilot, and Platinum was more popular amongst office workers. Even after decades, the build holds up. The metal cap adds durability and a bit of weight, not much. It is a very light pen. In fact, all the long short pens that I've got are under 15 grams. And it has a really good lever back sort of clip. It pops out and back. When capped, it has a really sleek silhouette. Now, if we compare them side by side, there's not much difference, which is why I decided to use this Protea Slim as a comparison. Yes, it is a little bit taller, but that changes, and that's all because of what we said was that clever long short design. Then we have the Tulip being the taller one. Yes, it is probably just maybe 3 millimeters taller, but that is something, isn't it? To go from being the shorter one to being the taller one. So definitely, if we're, not posting this, it just feels too short for being a long-term writer or for writing very much with it. But the moment you pop that on, it is so balanced. So I would say design-wise, these are so clever. I just love it. The whimsy, the nostalgia, the reason that that came about, and how it is still a practical design for today. Love it. Now, if we look at the nibs, they're very different. Also the caps. Obviously, we said this is a screw cap, this is a push cap, but the nibs, the Protea Slim features a much larger gold nib, ornate, engraved, and proudly on display. In contrast, this is more refined or sedate. The vintage one uses a hooded nib with mostly just, the tip visible, so you don't get to see the whole lot of it. In fact, it shows you less of the nib than the vintage Pilot Elite shows. So, comparing two hooded nibs, that one's showing far less of the nib than this one. This one is larger, broader. But if we compare the Sailor to the Platinum long short, interesting, because the Platinum one is teeny tiny. Look at that. You can see the pens are all from the same era of the 60s and 70s, but very different. Modern pen caps tend to be more airtight than the older ones. But the reason that this hooded design was so popular is because it also helps to reduce evaporation. So it not only was there to make the pen look sleek and streamlined, but it had that practical purpose too. Both are on the small side, and we saw what happens when you keep them capped or posted. And the Protea Slim feels more balanced, I would say, when posted. This is good in terms of how it expands the length, but it is extremely light. And the vintage pen is also thinner, especially at the grip area. So this is where you grip, and you can see that that's a very different grip section width. A matter of millimeters can make all the difference with how comfortable you feel to use a pen for any length of time. But then I'm going to have to admit that because my hands aren't that large, I've got a hand that's 17 centimeters long and 7.5 centimeters wide. I actually find both of them extremely comfortable to use for a long time. that is going to be an exception rather than a rule, because a lot of people will have larger hands, and then the Pro Gear Slim is most likely to feel more suited for a longer writing session than the vintage one. Now, both of them are lightweight and portable, and the Pro Gear has that screw cap, which for most people will take just one closure, like one turn to close. Each pen reflects a distinct design philosophy from Sailor, one contemporary and luxurious, the other bold and innovative for its time. So I've already touched on value and the price, and you know that the prices are very, very different. At £190, this Pro Gear Slim is a mid-range pen, so there are pens that are significant. You get a professionally tuned 14-karat gold nib that writes smoothly straight out the box. You get consistent quality control from Sailor, a modern build and design, and in this case, limited edition exclusivity. And I picked up mine during a clearance sale, so it had been reduced to £125, which I then brought down by adding a Black Friday code to it and brought it down to £112.50. And since then, I've actually found quality gold nibbed Pilot, Sailor and Platinum pens, both vintage and modern, on second-hand sites for around £70. So one of the lessons I've learned since getting into this hobby is that modern fountain pens, unless they're limited editions, often lose value once inked. So you'll find a lot of sellers out there parting with their pens for a fraction of the cost of a new one. I originally thought I mustn't buy gold nib pens second-hand because I assumed the previous owners would have altered the nib's tuning. But in reality, I haven't experienced a huge issue with having a second-hand gold nib pen. One of my favorites is a second-hand one. Now, could you find new ones for less? Yes, with patience and research. It's about having the time or taking the time to do your research. But if your time feels too precious and you're like, oh, I can't be bothered with that, I'd rather just pay full price, then that's also fine. Now, with the vintage pocket pen, I paid £37. It doesn't have Pro Gear Slim's converter system, so what you're stuck with is just the cartridge, and you'll have to keep filling up a Sailor cartridge, and can't take the Sailor converters because there's not enough room to actually fit it in the top of that. So that's a downside. The Pro Gear Slim, I am definitely keeping for the long haul. I would love for this to be sort of like a family heirloom, but I would have to have someone in the family who is as crazy about fountain pens as I am, and I don't have that currently. But I would love for this to be something that gets passed down. So, when you go for the modern ones, you can think about how that might be something that you're passing on and becomes this family legacy. Now let's focus on this little red and the silver gem again. Yes, there is no warranty or customer support. Yes, it's only a cartridge filling system. But for under £37 or $50 US, you get a real gold nib, a charming vintage design, a pen that writes beautifully, and it embodies the long-short design trend of mid-century Japan and represents Sailor's brand's pioneering of the long-short form. I think potentially this scratch has gone through, but it hasn't affected the red. So if you look at that closely. So mine is in great shape. The Tulip engravings are intact with only a few minor scratches. Fortunately, none of those scratches are deep enough to affect the design. These pens usually retail for more, so I lucked out. I know the ballpoint version is currently available for over £100 in much more worn condition. My final thoughts are that the Pro Gear Slim is a premium pen. You're paying for craftsmanship, convenience, and exclusivity in a lot of cases. The vintage pocket pen is also a premium experience, far more budget-friendly for me. Writing performance, they are on par pen to paper, but of course you've got the trade-offs that we talked about. Ultimately, value is subjective. If you love design, exclusivity, and modern reliability, the Pro Gear Slim will be worth every penny for you. If you prefer vintage style, budget brilliance, and a bit of pen history, I think this 1960s one delivers in spades. They're equally rewarding experiences for me, and this one obviously offers something rarer in a different sense, a tangible piece of the past that still works beautifully 60 years later. I'd like to say that one requires less care than the other, but to be honest, at this price point, I'm going to take great care of this one. And considering the age of this, I'm going to take great care of this one. So neither one of these are a throw in the bag pen for me. I reach for the Pro Gear Slim when I want precision or to maximize the space I'm working with on paper, think journals and planners, but I often reach for this long short Tulip when I want something softer. Let me know in the comments, would you rather splurge on a modern limited edition or hunt down a cool vintage find? I'd love to hear which pen you'd pick, and I'll be back with a comparison of 3 German fountain pens from 1999 and 2000, each one showcasing the unique design of the Y2K era. Thanks so much for watching.